Today is December 14th, 2021. I won't say anything more about the significance of the date, December 14th, 2021. But I will say this. Sorry, I'm a little too distracted by these visuals, even though I've muted it. So I'm going to pause it for a second. I will say this. When we look at Australia today, when we look at New Zealand today, and what those two countries have become, it's hard to avoid the conclusion that I'm about to relate. And I want it to be known before I say what I'm going to say is that while I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment, very strong supporter of the Second Amendment, I'm not, I don't wear it on my sleeves, and I'm not a gun enthusiast. Not that there's anything wrong with being one, and not that I have anything against those who do love guns and so forth. But it's really not. I'm saying this as a disclaimer because it really doesn't apply to me. I came to realize and acknowledge the importance of the Second Amendment, of gun rights, of gun freedom, the freedom to bear arms. I came to recognize this freedom not because it was instilled into me, not because I was raised in an environment, where there were a lot of firearms about. Very much the opposite. Very, very much the opposite. So what I'm saying here is not, again, it's not, if anybody's just dropping in from somewhere and saying, oh, it's just a typical American gun fanatic. I don't know why I'm saying that in a southern accent when it would be, the person who would be saying that would be, typical American gun fanatic. Typical American gun fanatic. Yeah. But I'm not that at all. And yet, you look at Australia, you look at New Zealand. Both of those countries were had their arms twisted. They were pressured to give up their gun rights, and both of these. The precipitating events for both of them was some event. It's something that took place that where there was supposedly a horrific mass shooting, and it was determined after this horrific mass shooting took place that you needed to confiscate guns, essentially, or people had no right per se to self-defense via ownership of guns. And people in Australia, people in New Zealand, not everyone, but it seems a large majority, said, okay, you're right, government, you're right, powers that be, let us do that, let us give up our guns. And then, just a few years later, well, in Australia, I think the precipitating event was a couple of decades ago. In New Zealand, it was only a couple of years ago. But then you have this so-called global pandemic, and governments across the world using this so-called global pandemic as an excuse to suspend people's God-given rights. Well, they took their guns away first, and now both of those countries, both Australia and New Zealand, look at what's become of both of them. Look at the mandates that they're attempting to push. The two-tiered society that they've openly set up in New Zealand. The Prime Minister of New Zealand openly said, yes, this is a two-tiered society between the Bajed and the non-Bajed, between those who have gotten the hot beef injection and those who have not. Those who have refused the toxic sludge hot beef injection are now second-class citizens. Two-tiered society. And all of the horrors taking place in Australia right now. This should all be kept in mind when we think about the events of December 14th, 2012, which I'm not going to name. I'm not going to give a name to it here. But if you go to BitShoot and you watch this video, let me just say it's eye-opening. It's hard not to come away feeling like you've been had. I'll leave the link below, and hopefully that won't get me in trouble. Won't call the wrath of the internet controllers down on me. But who cares? It's important. It's an important thing to say. So December 14th, 2012, I think was supposed to be a similar precipitating event. It was supposed to function in a similar way that those events in Australia and New Zealand functioned. But it didn't happen. It didn't work in the United States of America. Why? I guess because we have a more entrenched gun lobby here. And a more powerful gun lobby. And, for some people will say that's a terrible thing. That's a bad thing. I think it's a very, very good thing. If it's kept us from becoming what Australia and what New Zealand have become today, I think it's a very, very good thing. Whatever you personally think of guns. I'm not saying everybody should own a gun. I'm not saying everybody should love guns. I'm not saying everybody should be a gun freak, quote unquote, or anything like that. Again, I'm not cut from that cloth at all. Not to say that I'm better than that. Again, because I'm not saying that I'm better. I'm just saying it to say that even someone like me, who was very much raised in a non-gun environment, can see well enough to connect the dots. And again, this date, December 14th, it's been 9 years. You invert the two final numerals, 2012. It's now 2021. Same date, December 14th. And I really do honestly think that we, to use an all too on the nose metaphor, we dodged a bullet, because this wild, sensationalistic media driven event that took place on December 14th, 2012 did not become the impetus, did not become what it was designed to become. We are still a nation in which gun ownership is protected by law. It's better protected in some places in the country than in others, but in general, it is protected by law. And in places like Australia, which has become this oppressive police state full of detention camps for citizens who are resistant to the current regime's efforts to bring on what one official even talked about as the New World Order. She used those very words, New World Order. That was in a previous video that I recorded. Well, the only way, I'm convinced the only thing that keeps us standing firm here in the United States is the fact that citizens are allowed to own guns. And I know that people try to poo-poo this by saying, "Oh yeah, well, your guns are no good against the nuclear might of the military, or the military can still march into your town and blow up your house and do this and do that." It makes a difference. It does make a difference. Okay? You can talk all you want about how powerful the military is, but if you have a well-armed citizenry, it makes it harder for them to get their way. Of course, they can still nuke a city, nuke as many cities as they want if they feel inclined to do that. But that's not their goal. They don't want to nuke their own country. They want to oppress their own country. They want to force their own country to follow these mandates, these evil mandates, and to go lockstep into the kind of future that they want to create for us, the quote-unquote new normal. And if you're telling me that having a well-armed citizenry isn't doing something to hold back this effort of theirs, then I'm going to tell you, you're flat out wrong. You're flat out wrong. As evidence, look at United States, the state of the United States right now, vis-a-vis mandate tyranny. Compare it to the state of Australia right now. Compare it to the state of New Zealand right now. 3 countries, all springing from the same tradition, made up largely of the same type of people. Western nations, even though technically speaking Australia and New Zealand are not in the West at all, but culturally Western nations. There's so many things that these 3 countries have in common, and only in one of them do we find great resistance, holding back this tide of tyranny and totalitarianism. And in only one of those nations are people given the freedom to protect themselves via firearms. Those are my thoughts on this December 14th, 2021. Thank you for watching.